see the title today without knowing it. I had two other options for titles, and I was kind of wrestling with it. One was Unknown Guest, and the other was Mysterious Strangers. Mysterious Strangers. And I have to admit, my thought about this was that sometimes we have unknown guests of victory, right? And sometimes when you talk to them, they just by chance they came into victory, maybe they planned it. But otherwise, the idea and the thought is, how do we respond to them? Are we there to greet them? Are we hospitable? And it's really important. So whether I use the other two titles or this one, the real question is, what does Christian love consist of? What does it really consist of? We know the term agape, which is a term for godly love, a godlike love. It's a love that in the original language, one idea is that it guts it out no matter what. It guts it out, or you can say it takes the hill no matter what the obstacles are. One definition I really like for agape love is that this love focuses on the object of that love. And no matter what the obstacles and circumstances are, nothing will prevent that love from being expressed on that object, which helps me to have a greater appreciation for John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. There was no obstacles. There was nothing that would stop him from showing his love, even by giving up his own Son. So we have this word agape, this idea for love, this ultimate love, which we talk a lot about at Victory, but there's actually another word that really binds to this agape in the Christian experience. And that word, that concept, in the original language, and we're doing the Greeking of these days, so it's called Philadelphia. We would say Philadelphia, but in the original language is Philadelphia, which if you go to the lexicon, the Greek lexicon says brotherly love / brotherly sisterly love. And that's the idea of it, that there is a brotherly and sisterly love that we have for one another. I'd like to read from 2 Peter. 2 Peter, Peter wrote in his letter, God's divine power has given us everything we need for a godly life through our knowledge of him who called us by his own glory and goodness. Through these he has given us his very great and precious promises, so that through them you may participate in the divine nature, the very nature of God, having escaped the corruption in the world caused by evil desires. For this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to goodness knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control perseverance, and to perseverance godliness, and to godliness brotherly affection, and to brotherly affection unselfish love. Now, interestingly, when we read the brotherly affection, this is the word Philadelphia. Brotherly or sisterly love. So we are to add to our faith all these ingredients as they are leading to the ultimate goal of agape, a godlike love. And so to godliness we add this brotherly and sisterly love, Philadelphia, until we reach to the very end, and the apex, the crescendo. Unselfish love is the word agape. The crescendo, the climax, the crowning virtue, which everything is attached to. But notice, Philadelphia, brotherly love and sisterly love as Christians is attached. In fact, love was and is a telltale sign of our salvation. We know that we have passed from death to life, John says, because we love our brothers and sisters. Anyone who does not love remains in death. Which leads us to today's text, really two verses. There's other scriptures, but this is the crux of it. The Hebrew writer wrote in chapter 13, he commands, he encourages the Christian community to live a certain lifestyle, a certain way, a certain path that he wanted Christians to follow in this regard to love. And so we read in Hebrews 13:1, keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. Well, guess what word is here for keep on? Now, I like the NIV. I've got the newer NIV now, and it's a little bit of an adjustment. And sometimes this is the thing. Have you ever known somebody who thought their version, their Bible is the only translation or version? Raise your hands. Yeah, we know better. We do, yeah. And sometimes even with the change in the translation to a more modern translation, sometimes there's some twists and turns, but sometimes they really have some great things. So we have to be cautious not to jump on the new translations or to think ours is the very best, because they all have a certain set of rules and laws that they are stuck to, sometimes to a good rendering and sometimes not such a good rendering. But here I like what the NIV, the newer version, has, keep on loving. Keep it up. It's in present tense. Keep continuously, habitually, and Philadelphia, loving your brothers and sisters. And this shows, I love this, this shows a great diversity in people. I mean, we come from different states, we have different backgrounds, maybe different philosophies with different ages, different education possibly, and with all this diversity, we have this special relationship as the Christian community. It's such a fantastic thing, unlike any other community in the world. And at the time that this was written, the word brother was used only of being a family member for the most part, or at least being part of the same ethnic group. It would not usually be used for anyone else. In fact, in the Old Testament, brother usually meant you were talking about a fellow Israelite. In fact, even in Acts chapter 13, Paul is trying to reach his his Israelite brothers and sisters. And so he makes a slight distinction between the Gentiles, those God-fearers who came to God. But let's listen to this. Acts 13. Paul writes, or Luke writes, but Paul said, brothers, descendants of Abraham's family, and those Gentiles among you. Do you get that? And those? Not these, but those. Brothers, descendants of Abraham, and those Gentiles among you who fear God, the message of this salvation has been sent to us, meaning basically to Israelites. So we see this idea how the word brother was not used loosely originally. And we do know that the scripture says we have a Jewish hope, a Jewish Messiah, first to the Jews, then to the Gentiles. But the beauty of this now is that in Christ, there is neither Jew nor Gentile, slave nor, we're all one in Christ. And so we are one family. And so now in this Hebrew letter, we're reading that. Let's go to, let's stay there, Hebrew 13:1, we're on there. Keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. And this idea is that we are to treat each other as fellow believers as though we were treating an esteemed family member. Someone who is equal to an esteemed family member. So keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. Now, this next verse, I love this. This is the crux of the whole message today. And do not forget to show hospitality and hospitality too. Because, yeah, okay. That's another Greek word. No, it's not. Hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. The title today. Some other versions might have show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have been entertaining angels unawares. Unawares. Wow. Unconsciously, unawares. And that's why the possibility of the other titles, unknown guest, mysterious strangers. Now, hospitality was not strictly a Christian thought. It started much earlier. It appears in the very beginning of history in the Old Testament because traveling was dangerous. Hospitality was a sacred obligation. You would invite someone into your home. And once they were invited into your home, you would be hospitable. You would entertain them. You would take care of them. You would give food and lodging and protection and care. And who knows what the kindness that you have been giving to that person, that affection. Sometimes you don't really know who the person even is. You don't have their life history. You don't have all their background, but possibly you have been entertaining angels, the Hebrew writer writes, unconsciously. And this is a Greek idiom, meaning not apparent as an entertaining angel. It wasn't apparent. They didn't know it. Now, the word angel in the original, in the Greek text at least, first means a messenger. And it could be a human messenger, but it's a messenger. The second definition, very close to it, is the word angel. An angel. And so we'll notice the Hebrew writer writes, do not forget. Why do you think he wrote that? Because sometimes we forget, right? Sometimes we forget. Do not forget. It's not like, this house here. This is God's house. We call it God's house a lot of times, right? And we also call this our house, right? And it is our house. And we had our hands raised up. We feel like this is our house because we're God's children. And I think sometimes, too, when people come to Victory and they're coming, we've never seen them before, just maybe a chance visit. We have greeting time during the service time, and I don't know about you, but a lot of times we go right to the people we're familiar with, don't we? Sometimes we go to the people we've seen maybe 2 or 3 times during the week even. But yet we have these unknown guests. We have these mysterious strangers that come in the morning. And so because whether it's in our home or this particular morning or every morning, we could be entertaining messengers, actual angels unaware. We actually have 2 examples of Abraham and Lot who actually entertained angels unaware. They were unconscious of it. Let's take a look at Genesis chapter 1. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great tree of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. And again, doesn't this sometimes happen on Sundays? Notice that word appeared. The Lord appeared. Have you ever done this on a Sunday? You're talking to somebody during maybe the greeting time, and you're looking to your side, and all of a sudden you look in front of you, there's a new person. You ever do that? It's like, oh, just appeared out of nowhere. They kind of walked in and while we're greeting and things like that, and just appeared before you. A chance visitor? Maybe. An unknown guest? Yes. Mysterious stranger? Possibly. But they have come into God's house. They have come into our house because we're God's children. And I love the next verse. Look at what happens. This is how the Lord appeared, how Abraham got connected with God and these 2 other visitors. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. This is how it happened. The Lord appeared. There were 3 men standing nearby, but not too close. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground, giving this royal honor to these chance visitors. Or maybe not chance visitors, but provided by God's providence, his direction. And he said to them, if I have found favor in your eyes, my lord, or sirs, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under the tree. Let me get you something to eat so that you can be refreshed and then go on your way now that you have come to your servant. That sounds like hospitality, doesn't it? Wow. Very well, they answered. Do as you say. A chance visitor, mysterious stranger, unknown guest, or the very providential care and direction of God. Well, one of the 3 men, quote unquote, was God, who gives a promise that Abraham and Sarah would bear a child in their old age. And we know God was one of the 3 because we read in verse 22, when the Lord earlier was speaking of the outcry spoken against Sodom and Gomorrah, we read that the men turned away and went towards Sodom, But Abraham remained standing before the Lord. And this word for Lord is the word Jehovah. Or Yahweh, even back it up, Yahweh, God himself, his personal name. So we know that God was there. And we know that the two other guests, the mysterious strangers, were angels, because shortly after this, in chapter 19, we read the two what? Angels. Arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. My lords or sirs, he said, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way eagerly in the morning. No, they answered, we will spend the night in the square. But again, sacred obligation. But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Abraham and Lot both entertaining angels, even God himself, and they were never really aware of the reality nor the impact. Unaware of whom they were serving. Again, our text, Hebrews 13:1. Keep on continually, Philadelphia, having brotherly love one to the other, sisterly love one to the other. Do not forget, because it is possible that we do, don't we? To show hospitality to strangers, unknown guests, mysterious strangers, chance visitors, miss. Providential provision by God bringing someone, yes. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, these unknown guests, for by doing so, some people have entertained or shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Without knowing it, unconsciously, unaware of the impact. And you know, whether we do these things, we don't do everything for an immediate blessing, do we? We do because we're servants of the Lord. But so often there is a blessing behind our actions. Whether it's here and now or whether it's then and there. Being unconscious of our duty, but not forgetting about it. We have unconsciously, we can bring ourselves to a blessing that we never knew existed. And again, the blessing could be here, it could be there one day. There's one person who did something along these lines. We read about it in Mark chapter 14. I just want to read this to you. While Jesus was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of a man known as Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Now this is someone's home. Jesus is a guest, and she comes and she performs this act. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, "Why waste this perfume? It could have been sold for a year's wages, and the money given to the poor." And they rebuked her harshly. "Leave her alone," said Jesus. "Why are you bothering her? She has done something beautiful to me." As a guest, right? She has done something beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want, but you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body. And again, with this idea of hospitality, as Jesus as a guest, unaware of the ultimate purpose, unaware of the ultimate impact of her action. Jesus says, she poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. And then Jesus said, I tell you the truth. Wherever the gospel is preached, throughout the world, we would say cosmos, or throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. And so it is, isn't it? Let's let Paul close with these two loves in action, agape and the Philadelphia. Paul wrote in Romans 12:9 and 10, love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good, be devoted to one another in love, honor one another above yourselves. Love must be sincere. Guess what word this is for agape? Godly love. One that takes the object of your love, you take it, the object is the most important thing. There's no obstacles. Nothing will get in the way of your showing that love and dispensing that love to that object. Godly love. Love must be sincere. Agape must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good, be devoted to one another in love. Philadelphia. Brotherly and sisterly love. Brotherly and sisterly affection and kindness to one another. The two go together. And let's read that last part together. Honor one another above yourselves. Amen?